Corey bought a huge piece of land 35 years ago. It was a rocky piece of landscape that nobody wanted. He had built a house on it and lived there with his family. But the land was so big, Corey never explored every part of it. For a year now, he's been exploring his own land and he has found multiple bizarre things. But this day, Corey found something that shocked him to his core. It looked like military equipment. What was this doing here, and for how long was it laying here already? Then he thought of his old friend, who was a general now. Corey called his old friend and explained what he found. The general's reaction was shocking. "Corey, move away as quietly as possible. You were never supposed to find this." Corey still had a hard time believing that he had in fact been targeting with this military weapon, and that he had just been incredible. Luckily that the weapon had malfunctioned on impact. He had never expected this. But when he discovered who was actually responsible for sending the weapon his way, he could not say that he was entirely surprised. When the U.S. military heard about his find, they wasted no time in taking action. With the weapon still intact, they finally had the proof they needed. But who targeted Farmer Corey with the military weapon? How had it ended up on his land, and what was the U.S. military going to do? Before we start, smash the like button and make sure to subscribe if you haven't, and hit that notification bell so that you won't miss any new stories. When Farmer Corey was plowing his fields, he noticed something in the distance he had never seen before. He saw a big piece of green metal sticking out from the ground. Corey headed over to see what it was, but as he got closer, he realized it wasn't just a loose piece of metal lying around. It was a big metal capsule filled with little dark green balls. The capsule was filled with hand grenades. There were probably 50 of them, all piled up and ready to explode. Corey pulled his hand back and took a few steps backward. He wondered why this capsule suddenly lay in his field. He had never seen it before, so maybe someone had dumped it there recently. In the corner of the capsule was something engraved. It was very hard to read, as the rust had grown over it, but Corey could make out 2 letters and a few numbers. He ran inside to get a notepad and wrote everything down. JG 5239. Corey looked at the numbers but had no idea what they could be. He put his tractor back in the bar, tied a string around the capsule so he would always be able to see where it was, and went inside his farm. He thought about calling the police, but Corey had always loved going on adventures or solving difficult riddles, and he also didn't want the bomb squad involved. They would take over his farm and probably destroy his crops with their cars while they removed the capsule. No, Corey definitely didn't want that. So there was only one thing he could do: solve this mystery on his own, no matter how dangerous it could get. Suddenly it dawned on Corey this might be a dangerous mission. The grenades might still be active, so he couldn't take one with him. He went back outside to the capsule and took a few photos of it. He made sure to really capture every detail so he could zoom in if he needed. When he felt he had enough, he went back inside and typed the initials into his computer. He hoped to find at least a name, but sadly, nothing came up. Corey couldn't shake the excited feeling he got from this sudden mystery. This mystery gave him a purpose. He sat on his kitchen table, still looking at the numbers. There were a few numbers missing too. He only wrote down the numbers he saw clearly at that moment. So he opened one of the photos and zoomed in. Now he was able to make out a few more numbers and even the more letters, an N in the middle and a W at the end. N and W ... Wait a minute. Suddenly, Corey realized what the letters meant. N stood for north and W stood for west. They were coordinates. Corey was very excited about his first discovery. After that, he decoded the other letters, and soon he had all the coordinates he needed. He typed them into Google, but was surprised with what he saw. The coordinates led to a thick forest somewhere in Utah. It would be a long drive if he wanted to go over there, but he knew there was no other way. This was the only lead he had at this moment, so he had to follow it. He knew it would be a long drive, so he decided to take his old pickup truck. The drive was long and monotonous, but Corey was determined to reach his destination. Finally, after several hours of driving, he reached the coordinates. He found himself in the middle of the forest and there was no sign of a road or a path. He followed the compass and the coordinates seemed to lead him deeper into the forest. As he walked, he started to notice signs of human activity. He saw old rusty cans and broken bottles, and after hours of hiking, he finally arrived at a spot deep in the forest. There, he found an old, abandoned bunker. Inside the bunker, it was dusty and dark. He looked around and found various things that the soldiers had left behind, some uniforms and helmets, empty food cans and medical supplies. But then, he came across something that took his breath away. He found a pile of what seemed to be personal belongings of soldiers who had spent a lot of time here. Photographs, letters, and notebooks. As Corey looked at the letters, a piece of paper fell out of the pile and on the floor. It caught his attention and he grabbed it, curious to see what he would find on it. The piece of paper that he had picked up from the floor contained some more information that he had never expected to find. It was a map. He thought about what he was going to do next. Would he follow the map? He called his wife to tell her he would be home late today, and he sat down on the grass outside of the bunker to have a good look at this map. It wasn't very detailed, but it clearly showed the bunker and a nearby river, and something was marked with a big red X. What did the X mean? Corey decided to start his journey by finding the river first. From there, it should be easy to follow the rest of the path. Once again, he found himself walking through the thick forest, stepping through bushes and over fallen trees. He heard water running somewhere nearby. This had to mean that he was closer to the river. He walked towards the sound as it grew louder and louder, and not much later, he saw the river flowing through the forest. He walked along the river for a while, but suddenly he was taken by surprise. According to the map, he had arrived at a point where he could cross it. There was supposed to be a bridge. After a while, he realized that the bridge had been there before. He could see the remains on both sides of the river, but it was gone now. This map must have been drawn even longer ago than he first thought. But that wasn't his biggest worry right now. The river wasn't very wide and it didn't seem very deep either, but Corey didn't want to take the risk. So he had to find another way. Luckily for him, there were a couple of big tree branches lying nearby. He could definitely work with these. Once Corey had confirmed that the bridge was really safe enough for him to cross, he grabbed his things and safely put them away in his pockets and his shirt. After a few steps, he became more confident and determined. Even though his shoes and trousers had gotten wet, he had made it to the other side. He felt a rush of adrenaline, and he was ready to continue his adventure. He quickly checked the map again, and he started walking. As he continued, the path almost disappeared again. The forest and the bushes became thicker, and he had to really fight his way through. Suddenly, Corey found himself in an open space. And when he checked the map to see how much there was left until the marked X, he couldn't believe his eyes. According to the map, he had arrived already. He was standing right on the spot marked by the X. He decided to just look around the area and see if he would find anything that seemed out of place. Surely there must be something here. Why else would this exact spot be marked on that map? Suddenly, something caught his eye. He noticed something else on the map that he hadn't seen before. He must have thought it was just a smudge at first, but now that he had spotted it, it was as clear as day. He saw a little triangle right next to the X. This definitely had to mean something. As he studied his surroundings, he kept looking for something triangular, but there was nothing. Triangles aren't shapes you often come across in nature. However, he did notice something else that caught his attention. There was a huge rock. It was fairly big and remarkable, seeing that it was surrounded by green. Corey tried picking it up or moving it, but he couldn't. But suddenly he noticed something. Was it really possible that this was it? Corey took a few steps back and measured something with his feet. He had found the triangle. You see, as he was looking at the big rock, he noticed two more rocks in its vicinity, a couple of feet apart. And soon he realized that together, the three rocks formed a triangle, just like the one on the map. Corey realized the X must be in the middle of the triangle. And so he measured and calculated the middle, and once he was sure he had found the right spot, he started digging with his bare hands. He would have brought a shovel, but he didn't know he would need it. He ripped the grass and the plants out of the soil, curious to see what he would find underneath. After a while, he felt something hard. He stopped digging to take a better look at it, and as he wiped the earth off the surface, he realized that he had found a box. A few minutes later, Corey was holding the box in his hands. He put it down on the ground before him and held his breath while he slowly lifted the lid. He was amazed by what he saw inside the box. It were personal belongings of one of the soldiers. He found photos, letters, and even a journal. He would have loved to read it all immediately, but he decided to head home and take the box with him. This way, he would have a look at it at home and he wouldn't have to hurry. He quickly gathered all his things and started his way home. After a while, he finally arrived home. He was tired and had actually planned to look through the box the next day, but he couldn't wait that long. He spent the entire night reading those letters in the journal, which contained many stories about what that soldier had been through during the war. By the end of it, Corey felt like he had known this man personally, and it was all connected to that capsule on his property as well. He had found the coordinates of the bunker on it with the letters JG. And this box had belonged to someone named JG as well. Corey decided to contact the local authorities in hopes of finding JG's family, and to his surprise, it worked. Apparently, JG had gone missing during the war, and his family was overjoyed to have some of his old belongings back. They were very thankful for Corey, and they became good friends. That same day, the police came to Corey's house and removed the capsule from his garden. And Corey himself was happy to have experienced such an adventure. He had never expected a day of exploring his own land to end like this.